Hello, good morning. It's a cold morning here in the city of Jos. So I don't know how the weather is where you are, but wherever you are, please, if it's cold, try and keep warm. Take something hot as well, and then try and have a face mask on as the weather is quite dry so that you don't fall ill to any sickness. The program is the Dailies, where we look at some of the happenings on the front page of the paper. So please do well to drop your comment, your views, as they are always welcome on the show. I am Sada Shidasham. I'm doing this program alongside Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Good morning, Phoebe.
It's really cold. Yeah. Well, we have quite a number of papers, and we would love to start with the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
The big story on the paper: tax reform bills offer 55% to states in new sharing formula. Manufacturing sectors contribute 5.02 trillion naira to economy. Details inside the paper. Our polytechnic lecturers begin strike December 2nd. Bode judge tackles Onanuga for inside insulting Obasanjo. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which happens to be the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. The big story, hashtag in bad governance, Amnesty accused police of killing 24, says it had evidence of deaths, demands transparent investigation, data found on page 3. Lawmakers confirm Oluyede as the chief of army staff, so we look forward to seeing all the experience that he has gathered for the past 30 years or more, that he will use it to eradicate insecurity in the country. And then we're seeing why poly lecturers are embarking on warning strikes starting from December 2nd, which happens to be on Monday. This is coming from ASO President. You can do well to read why they are intending to go on that strike. Edu Sanwo-Olu orders grace commissioning of Zenith Bank Paris branch. You can find that on page 6. We can see the picture story as well regarding that. And we have Ulite Oyetola paid 17.2 billion naira pension gratuity in 2 years. APC replies Adeleke. We will recall where he said he has not borrowed. He's spending on, so that he pay pensioners. And here we're seeing APC replying the fact that he is lying. So you can read more detail of this accusation and reply on page 2. And that's all on Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, 70,000 naira minimum wage may not afford tissue paper in 5 years' time. Ajero is saying, says constant review of wages necessary. Nigerians blow 68 billion naira on UK visa in 1 year, reject source like from a report that is, despite spending this much on visa, we are still getting rejected. Not everybody that applies that ends up getting a visa. You can find details on page 22. We can see from left to right, Minister Economy, Mr. Wale Odun, President, Chief Executive Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote Group, Managing Director, Chief Executive, Zenith Bank PLC, Dame Dr. Adara Omeoji, Director General of Treasury Finance, Bertrand. We have Bertrand Demont, Executive Director, Zenith Bank PLC. We have Mrs. Adobe Uwapa, and Founder and Chairman, Zenith Bank PLC, Jim Ovia, during the official commissioning of Zenith Bank in Paris. Hashtag end bad governance protest to 24 killed, 1,200 arrested. A report coming from Amnesty International. Senate passes tax bills for second reading as reps intensify moves to stop of opposition. Terrorists kill 4 NSCDC personnel, injures others. Nigeria's aviation sector misses top 10 GDP contributors list for 3 years. Details can be found on page 3, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Metric newspaper, Zenith Bank expand global footprint with official commissioning of Paris branch, which is the picture story regarding that story. And then in Europe, Man United give Amorim first victory, Chelsea crusade. You can find that story on page 22. Trial of Simon Ekpa to begin May 2025, say finished court. Kanu's release, Apan's trial will restore peace in the southeast. This is coming from an expert. You can find out who that expert is and what he has to say regarding that. Reps confirm Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede as the Chief of Army Staff. Detail found on page 3. Tax Reforms Bill, Huhaha. Indume blows hurt. The writer says rush by presidency saw some lawmakers to pass the bill suspicious. Says rush by the presidency, some lawmakers to pass the bill suspicious. Don't introduce such a bill when Nigeria is struggling to survive. Reps to convey special section on tax reform bills on Tuesday, where we're seeing regarding this tax reform. A committee has been said and they will look into it again in the next 6 weeks. So we're seeing that for the House of Rep, they will be looking at that reform on Tuesday, which happens to be the 3rd of December. So do well to read more detail on page 2. Amnesty International accuses Nigerian police of killing 24 #Embed governance protesters. You can read detail of that on page 9. Fubara commences payment of 85,000 naira minimum wage to Rivers civil servant. We have to applaud him because he has already commenced payment. Edo committee retrieved 30 vehicles from Obaseke's men. We will recall that a committee was set to look into some of the missing vehicles, and we're seeing that the committee have actually retrieved those vehicles from Obaseke's men. You can read that on page 19. We have an entertainment story on page 23. Please do well to get the paper in more detail of this story.
On the Daily Times newspaper, IBB or Tom Tambuwa or Abuja land title fees. The big story on the paper, President Tinubu calls for increased investment in food, security, energy, and education. ECPA's terrorism trial date set. House confirms Olufemi Oluyede as Army Chief. Bishop T.D. Jakes, I'm not afraid to die. Tax reform bills kill second reading at Senate, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On Daily Independent, tax reform bill proposed new sharing formula, cede 55% to states. The writer following that, more zero VAT on export and essential consumption. Reduce company income tax from 30% to 25%. Pass second reading at Senate, reps to hold special session on Tuesday. Federal government to begin collection of $300 helicopter landing fee soon. Political action must go beyond protest, says Ozibanjo. Detail found on page 7. Zenith Bank expand global footprint, open Paris branch. Polytechnics embark on strike December 2nd. Ajero criticized state implementation of the national minimum wage. You can read detail of what he have to say on page 29. Coming from the Amnesty International, where they are saying 24 people killed during the #Embed governance protests. Detailed on page 7. We are edging closer to stability in food security, says Tinubu. Unveils initiative to reduce out-of-school population. Downside of the paper, federal government asks TechFund to cancel foreign scholarship for academic staff. You can read detail of that on page 29, and that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On First News newspaper, the big story, 24 lives lost. Amnesty International exposes police brutality in #End governance crackdown. Protests must lead somewhere, not just temporary euphoria. This is a statement from Osibajo. Tinubu's tax reform bills advance in Senate. Reps seek broader consensus. Reps confirm Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede as Chief of Army Staff. Federal government distributes over 15 CNG buses to transport unions in Abuja. Wike slams Simon Ekpa as jobless scammer. Still on the paper, Tinubu calls for French investment in Nigeria's food security, energy, and education. Community leaders claim Port Harcourt refineries' products are old stock. Nigeria's census to hold in 2025, says the NPC chair, and we are honestly looking forward to knowing how much are we really in our population. And then we have a picture, a moment of diplomacy. We can see Brigitte Macron, President Tinubu, Emmanuel Macron, and Senator Oluremi Tinubu unite in France for a pivotal state visit aimed at enhancing Nigeria-France relations. That's all the news on First News newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, well, it's day, which happens to be on the 1st of December, which is on Sunday. Already we're seeing that the Guardian here is giving us that the rising spread, more HIV-infected kids, slow race to zero scorch. Now we have about 140,000 Nigerian children are currently affected by the HIV virus. 22,000 new mother-to-child transmission of HIV yearly. Nigeria contributes 25% of the global burden of HIV mother-to-child transmission. Contribute 46% of new infections among kids in the Western Central Africa, 18% of global figure. 35% get pediatric treatment as against the global set standard of 95%. 15,000 deaths recorded among children yearly, 300 of which occur weekly. So I mean, that's why the fact that we thought that this virus is going down, but we're still seeing that Nigeria is actually having 18% of the global figure. So we need to do something to eradicate this, and there more sanitization needs to go into awareness regarding how kids will not be affected through their mother, and then as well as how people can keep themselves safe so they don't get affected by the HIV virus. So you can do well to read more detail of the story on page 4 and 5. Senate moves forward with tax reform bills as critics call for caution. Shun migration, federal government tells fresh foreign trained medical doctors. Shun migration, federal government tells fresh foreign trained medical doctors, in as much as you tell them to shun, you do something to make sure that their work here will be appreciated. Witness tell court how he collected $400,000 for MFLA. Global wages outgrowing inflation, says the ILO. And we have Amnesty International accuses police of killing 24 protesters in Kano and others. Emphasis on individual success weakens political action, says Ozibanjo. You can find detail on page 3. Electricity subsidy skewed against masses, minister affirms. Data found on page 7. And that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On New Telegraph, the first story, NAMA recommences $300 helicopter landing levy. We're deepening civil-military relations to enhance national security, coming from the CDS. On allocation, our determination destroyed enemy's Black Christmas plot, a statement from Fubara. Alleged abuse of office, ex-CBN governor's aide testifies in court, details $400,000 transaction. Finnish court gets May 2025 deadline for Simon Epa's trial. The big story on the paper in Paris, Tinubu calls for more investment in food security, solid minerals and others, says Nigeria positioning for more FDI to partner France in fight against insecurity, states Nigeria commitment to returning out-of-school children to classrooms. You can find details on page 2 and 28. Police killed 24, detained 1,200 #end bad governance protesters, say Amnesty International. Census delay hindering Nigeria's progress. This is a statement from NPC. Why polytechnic lecturers are embarking on warning strike by Shaman. On Ondo Guba, tribunal yet to receive petitions. You can find details on page 5. Invitation of experts by National Assembly in other Pabio is saying alongside the tax reforms bill hearing that is ongoing. You can find details on page 2, 3, and 5. 70,000 naira may not buy tissue paper in next 5 years. This is a statement from Joe Ajero, the NLC leader. This is concerning minimum wage, stating the fact that it is very important for the government to annually review minimum wages. We have a study that says eating after 5 p.m. increases blood sugar risks. That's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Tinubu offers French investors easy in, easy out opportunity. The writer say macro pledges support and collaboration. More detail found on page 4. Australia bars under 16 from using social media, and I think this is commendable because until they know the value and what to post, they should be banned from using that. More data found on page 5. Hajj Commission refunds 5.3 billion naira to states and FCT. The big story which is making the rounds on most paper regarding the reform bill proposes 55% VAT revenue for states. Proposal scales second reading at the Senate. House of Rep continues consultation. We have some of the highlights of the bill content, where we see exemption from minimum wage earners, no tax for small businesses with 50,000 or less annual turnover. I take that again. No tax for small businesses with 50 million or less annual turnover. No VAT on food items, medical services, pharmaceuticals, education fees, and electricity tariff. Slash of income tax for 30% to 25%. Streamlining of collection. So you want to know some of the highlights of what the bill contains. You can do out a detail of that on the front page and on page 5. Downside, we have population census likely next year, says the MPC. Tributes for ex-Senate President Wires. Detail found on page 3. And that's all on the Nation newspaper.
Now the major stories on this day newspaper. Zenith Bank expands global footprints with official inauguration of Paris branch. CBN AGF raised alarm over rising judgment debt involving NDAs. Landmark tax reform, Senate passes bills for second reading. The big story on the paper, Tinubu to Macron, we are repositioning Nigeria's economy for more impactful FDIs. The writer says nation open to more investments in defense, education, solid minerals, and others. In shout out to Arise News, Tinubu says we are being well treated. Pledges to return out of school children to classrooms, and then a picture with the caption strengthening ties for more wins, where we can see President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and President Macron alongside their first ladies. And that's all the news on this day newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, Senate passed tax reform bill for second reading. We've seen that on most of the papers. SEC warned investors against crypto platform Marino FX Limited, says it's not licensed. You can read more detail of that in the paper. And then in Paris, Tinubu urges more investment in food security, solid mineral, energy, and education. The big story regarding Nigeria's population census to be conducted in 2025, the chairman of the National Population Commission, Nasir Kwara, has announced that Nigeria's long overdue national census will finally be conducted in 2025. So all fingers are crossed, hoping to see the date that it will be given for the census. UK introduces electronic travel authorization for non-European visitors. Alleged corruption, ex-Bank of China chairman sentenced to death. You can see how other countries are treating corruption. More data found in the paper. Finnish court set May 25th deadline for EPA's terrorism trial. We will take over Ariwa Consultative Forum Secretariat if chairman is not reinstated, Northern Youth Group. And I just hope that this doesn't turn out to be another chaos, because I clearly, I remember saying the fact that the youth should concentrate on empowerment, some of the things that will make them to be better, rather than to channel their energy towards what is happening in the area consultative forum. I know, of course, it's part of them, but then looking at what the chairman said, he should actually go through a certain form of discipline, so that next time, before you represent an entire body, you actually consult widely before you say something. So here we're seeing that the youth are saying that they will take over the secretariat. We know how this thing turns out to be sometimes. Either somebody gets harmed or somebody gets killed eventually. So all fingers are crossed, but let us see how this whole thing will turn out to be. And that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On Blueprint newspaper, on Hajj 2023, Jigawa refunds 95 million naira to pilgrims for services not rendered. Ubasani receives repentant bandits, reopens Birnin Gwari market. CBN Justice Ministry moves to curb rise in judgment debt cases. On sports, Super Eagles drop 8 places in FIFA rankings. The big story on the paper, we are more committed to food security, Tinubu tells French investors, says financial sector evolving and flourishing, economy repositioned for more FDIs. You can start with the details on the front page. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff is saying no single institution can solve our nation's security challenges. Therefore, there's a need to unite and synergy between all of our security and bodies. Protests not enough to bring about measurable reforms. A statement from Osibajo explains role of technology in political discourse. Tax reform bill scales second reading in Senate. FCTA's task force raids one transport in Abuja. Dangote Edun Ovia opens Zenith Bank Paris. You can find details on page 11. The last story on the paper, Inter NNPC's upstream boss tax stakeholders on corporate governance. And that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On that blueprint, I love the cartoon that says Super Eagle drops 8 plates in FIFA ranking and the rest one who clip their wings. Even though it's on a lighter note, but I'm just hoping that something needs to be done about our Super Eagles. I mean, they tend to be going down every day. Just cannot help but wonder what's happening. We are the Eagles, for crying out loud. But yes, something seems not to be in place. Well, let's just keep fingers crossed and see how all things turns out to be. Well, I'd love us to take a time out at this moment just to let you take some breather, drop your comment, drop your views on any of the story. And when we come back, we'll continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned. For those who are just tuning in or actually connecting on their Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching us, it's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the front page of the paper, among which is the tax reform that is making the rounds. We're seeing that it has actually scaled second reading in Senate, but on Tuesday, the House of Reps will be looking into it, and a committee has been set up that's in Senate to look into it. So hopefully in the next 6 weeks, we'll hear what will be the outcome of the consultation regarding it, where we're seeing that certain tax has been removed from certain things such as food and other things. So please do well to do the highlights of what this bill contains. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Port Harcourt Refinery controversy surround NNPCL claim on operation, where we're seeing one of the papers saying that some of the things they are quite old. So you can read more detail of that on page 29. The Punch big story is regarding minimum wage. Labour states hold last-minute talks ahead Monday strike. NLC mobilizes for total shutdown. State hopeful for beating December 1st deadline, which is on Sunday. And on tax, Northern senators regroup. Bill scales second reading, that is regarding the tax reform. NAFDAC mops up fake malaria drugs. So please, if you are down with malaria, as we know this is the season, the weather is quite cold, so it's a breeding ground for these mosquitoes. Before you consume any malaria drug, make sure you verify that it's actually not a fake drug that you're taking, so you don't become more ill than you are already. Read detail of that on page 12. Tinubu seek France collaboration on food security and education. You can read that on page 7. Regarding money laundering, US-based Nigerian may get 20-year jail term for that. Suspended herdsmen kill Ogun chief on farmland, a sad one. Job creation not part of my mandate, coming from Labour Minister. So questions will be, what is part of your mandate? You can read detail of that on page 16, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, the big story: Lukman nominated for Syria Potom Award. Leverkusen tempts Boniface with new offer. Akpom not ruling out January exit from Ajax. You can find details on page 6. Chelsea unsure of Reece James injury. Mbappe Bellingham injured. Lewandowski back to equal Messi UCL record. I will always pay attention to Real Madrid. A statement from Rodri. You can find details on page 3. Ronaldo sued by cosmetic doctor. Miami teases Messi with contract extension. We love him. Nottingham Forest boss provides update on Olaina's contract situation. You can find details on page 6. Former unread champion urges Joshua to wait for Tyson Fury. And we have Super Eagles record biggest drop in FIFA ranking, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun.
On Nature newspaper, a special report that says UNESCO highlights how water scarcity escalates conflict. The United Nations World Water Development Report 2024 published by UNESCO warns that water scarcity is intensifying conflict worldwide and calls for urgent international cooperation to address this issue. So you can do out to read that story on the front page and continue in the paper. Daily Alake Slam MIREMCO for low performance. Tinubu urges increased French investment in food security and others. That's a big story. And we have CSO held Nasarawa Assembly probe of Chinese company. Environmental Health Council launches Nasira Funding Data Center. NPA boss urges stakeholders to upscale investment in port operation. Federal government court, state governors support on environmental action. And we have a fact check that says, do gas stove really kill 40,000 Europeans annually? It's a question you can read inside the paper. And that's all the Nature newspaper.
On Punch Sport newspaper, we have Emeka Nwokolo exclusive interview with the caption saying, my near-death experience before I became title holder. My car fell from a cliff, dropping almost 300 feet. I was in the car for about an hour, hoping it wouldn't explode. You can find details on page 6. Refs comments, NPFL hammer may fall on Ogumbote. Teller eager for Eagles return. And on cricket, Nigeria wins sub-regional World Cup qualifier title. Nigeria suffer massive drop in latest FIFA ranking. Olise risks UEFA punishment against James out till 2025. Di Maria nears gigs UCL record. United paid £21.4 million to replace Ten Hag with Amorim. Hence defends Joshua after Fury comments on an Adova HPL. We have to Marine win again. Queens peep Grasshoppers. LeBron powers Lakers above Sports, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
All right, let's take a look at the Business Day newspaper. Weak Naira squeezes cocoa processors and chocolates. You can read detail of that, where we have tons of cocoa surges to 567% in 1 year. So we can see how the Naira is affecting cocoa processing and as well all of that. You can read that on the front page and continue on page 31. Nigerians choose Kenya, Morocco over Dubai on visa constraint. This is regarding Christmas celebration. You can read detail of that in the paper. Senegal present candidates to succeed additional as the African Development Bank president. So we're seeing that his tenure there is almost up. So Senegal have presented a candidate to succeed him. African nation dig deep for mining investors to diversify economies. And then we are having Cote d'Ivoire host the first international mining conference where the vice president was present. Fixed income equities see sell-off after rate hike. Fixed income equity see sell-off after rate hike. You can read detail of that in the paper. We still have the picture story where the president snapped with the president of France and many other stakeholders that were present during that meeting. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On the metric spot, Frank Lampard appointed Coventry City manager. Osimhen out to continue red-hot UEL front against Dutch. On the UEFA Europa Champions League, Man United give Amorim first victory while Chelsea cruise. Chelsea's Reece James out until 2025 after hamstring injury. This is a report. You can find details inside the paper, and that's all the news on the Matrix Sport.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. So thank you to all our followers, our supporters, and every other person who make this program a success. We look forward again to doing this next week. So do have a lovely weekend ahead.